Think of it as training, Guardian. You can only get stronger from this. Fantastic work!
I hope you guys have been working out to Shax's mixtape, man. You could probably weightlift with that huge new fourth Horseman that we got this week. Guys, we are back, and we've got some new stuff to round up in the video. So today we're jumping in and we're going to touch on the new quest this week, and we do have some roundups and confirmation about Trials rewards, as well as a bit of an insight into how Bungie may handle updates for the mode in future. Also, we have a pretty neat secret area on the moon, which players have found in the upcoming bunker, so we'll talk about some of that stuff and what it could be for, as well as some stuff worth prepping up this week before that launches. And then we have a few other things to round up, so not the news heaviest video by any means, guys, but there is plenty to talk about regarding the new season, so let's get into it. Initially, of course, the fourth Horseman quest kicked off this week. And initially at reset, we were left a little bit confused because we couldn't gain access to the Lost Sector required to complete the quest. And so for a short period of time, we did think that the weapon was going to be time-gated or kind of locked to a different day. But Bungie have fixed it, of course, so we now have the weapon. Cosmo said it looks like there was an issue with the legendary Lost Sector scheduling, as Quarry was supposed to be available on the same day as the quest. And essentially when that bugged out, they did an override, and the Quarry Lost Sector was made available, both for the initial day that the quest kicks off, but also it's going to be available today. So it's worth bearing in mind if you haven't completed it yet, that there will be a time element to this. And on Thursday's daily reset, the mission required for it could potentially go away, because obviously there is a cycle of lost sectors that come up, but basically, it should be available every 3 days or so, but bear that in mind if you want to get the quest done. Of course, inside of Cevallos Office, as part of the quest though, we found Shax's mixtape, and of course, I was throwing some moves at you guys at the start of the video, but there are other things that you can inspect in the office and interact with. And then when you have the fourth Horseman, the Catalyst also becomes available, and that's as a random drop from clearing Seraph Bunkers, Seraph Tower public events, or Legendary Lost Sectors. And then there is a separate upgrade process for that. And so that is the new piece of content for this week. In a moment, we're going to do some other news roundups and things like that, but quick spoiler alert here, we're going to get a bit of a peek at some upcoming content this season. And so players have been breaking into bunkers early on both the Moon and Io, and a few really interesting things have been found. So firstly, players have found an interactable panel in the Moon bunker. So Krilling T shared these images right here, and obviously players are getting out of bounds to do this, but it appears there are some switches and destructible vents inside of these bunkers as well. So that's pretty interesting initially, but also, Siodeka shared a clip of them gaining access to a pretty large Black Tower room, which is also connected to the bunker. Obviously, it is pretty much pitch black here, but there are a bunch of Warmind terminals lit up, and from there, there's a walkway that extends out to where they find this bizarre sphere object. And from outside of the room, the lighting's a bit better, so they shared this image, and we can see this curious Warmind sphere. But funnily enough, Krilling on Reddit pointed out that this actually matches some concept art of early Rasputin exploration for Destiny 2 by Dima Goryanov from Bungie, so the component itself that we can see is actually pretty much the exact same thing, which is pretty crazy because this is stuff that Bungie were exploring early on in D2. So full credit, of course, to the folks who have found and documented these spaces, but it does raise the question of what are they for? And this is where speculation comes in, of course, so we have to temper our expectations about what we're seeing, but it simply could be an upcoming mission space for the Moon bunker, or perhaps some kind of secret mission. It could even be a cutscene space, or a space that they're going to use for a puzzle. Of course, there's possibilities of exotic quests, but pretty much any of these things are possible, so once again, we should temper our expectations, but in itself, it's pretty cool to get a look at spaces that at least appear to be kind of secret ready. And in general, it's cool to see the space. That Warmind concept was one where the artist was exploring Rasputin as a kind of hacked satellite, the idea being that this was some of the earliest Warmind tech that actually existed. But we should also remember that the anomaly is on the moon, and that PvP map, or the space in general, houses an object which is suspected to be linked to the pyramid ships. And of course, we are supposed to be building back toward that story as we move to the end of the year, so who knows, maybe these spaces could play a role in those story revelations or the handoff to the next season. And I'd love to hear thoughts from you guys about what the space could be, story speculation and all of that, but once again, let's not let our expectations get ahead of us on this one. Otherwise, of course, next week on Tuesday's reset, we will get legitimate access to the Moon bunker. And what we know is going to happen is that we'll be able to unlock the sidearm from the Seraph set, so just like the EDZ, you have to be rank 3. And something worth noting is that it is totally worth upgrading the EDZ bunker to rank 3, since all of the bunkers require rank 3 before you can pick up the machine gun from the set, so remember that, but also, if you're already done doing upgrades, be sure to farm out and keep Warmine bits so that you can invest those into new bunkers. And bear in mind as well that bunkers have their own individual chipsets, so it is better to hold on to Warmine bits for later use. And on top of the sidearm, we're going to get other upgrades and Warmine mods, so from the moon we can get a mod that when you collect a Warmine cell, allows you to get an overshield. That's actually pretty useful, and there's another as well which grants you charged with light whenever you collect a Warmine cell. So these cells are really powerful, by the way, and we'll speak about them more soon, but that gives us an idea of the content we'll be unlocking when that becomes available. And of course, I'll keep you posted. Now though, let's round up some updates and responses from Bungie. So, of course, based on what happened last weekend in Trials, there was a lot of conversation about armor only dropping in the flawless chest. And so Cosmo jumped in and said, we can confirm that Trials rewards will rotate each week, and you will not be required to go flawless in order to earn armor. So despite the fact that last week had all weapons inside of that rotation, outside of the Lighthouse chest of course, in future weeks it is going to be possible for armor to actually drop in the rotation, you know, when you get loot at 3, 5, and 7 wins. So essentially armor is not exclusively tied to going flawless. And that loot rotation is going to change every single week. Cosmo also confirmed that glows on flawless armor will last 2 weeks and will slightly fade after the first week. And another update as well on power for Trials. DMG said stay tuned on details about the artifact being disabled for Trials, and of course Bungie had said that that will happen after the first week. And so with that tease right there, I'm pretty sure we can expect no artifact power being relevant inside of Trials this weekend. Ryan Gilliam at Polygon did actually get a few words from some of the Bungie developers about Trials that are interesting. So in the article, which I'll link down below, he says for how Trials of Osiris will evolve over time, Bakken and Adams, which are the two Bungie devs, are waiting to hear from the players. So I can tell you that all of our plans are in flux, and we're pretty excited about all the things we're talking about, and a lot of it really depends on the feedback that we get from players over the next several weeks. And so Polygon point out that it still isn't clear whether the team will refresh Trials of Osiris weapons and armor when Season 11 hits. And obviously Bungie aren't going to give too much away just yet, but I would say that if they're taking feedback on specifically how to handle the evolution of Trials, as well as the refresh on Trials rewards, I think realistically it's entirely possible that we might not see a refresh on Trials rewards until September, perhaps outside of a few specific items, right? I do agree with, I'm sure, many of you guys, who would hope that we get kind of fairly large updates to loot pools and things like that between seasons. Also on the subject of this season, if you hadn't noticed just yet, it will be ending on June 9th, and so that should also be the date where Season 11 of the game kicks off as well, that summer season. But of course, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. And then going back to the Trials article, Bungie talk about Trials accessibility for different types of player, and they definitely refer to it from that aspirational content point of view. So Lars Bakken said, the aspiration part is very important for Destiny as a game. Even if you're not going to raid or go to the Lighthouse, it's great for players to have those options and those opportunities in their own game. And of course there is definitely an element of that, but absolutely the element of aspirational content, right? And things like Trials Flawless specifically, not necessarily going to be the kind of gameplay achievement that players will get very quickly. It takes potentially quite a bit of practice and then obviously some time to be able to make that happen. And so give us your thoughts on Trials and the general ecosystem now that we had a full weekend of it. But folks have spoken about Trials ornaments for exotics in Eververse, and there are folks who aren't particularly happy about it. And 100% I agree personally, it would be awesome to see more of this stuff dropping in the game. Although specifically on the subject of Trials, right, I think it's safe to say that Bungie aren't necessarily doing anything differently inside of Eververse versus other parts of the game. Obviously it's just different now that we have Trials back and Eververse is in the place that it currently is. One thing that was pointed out to me though, when I inspected the new ornament for Outbreak Perfected, the exotic ornaments from Eververse do actually show your Trials glows. So if you've been flawless and you've got a glow active, that will also show up on the exotic weapon. Again, this is something that folks are not entirely thrilled about. You guys who've been watching my content for a long time entirely know my position on this kind of stuff, so I'm not going to rant on about it, but be sure to give us your thoughts down below. But now on to further updates. On the subject of early triumphs or bugged triumphs showing up for the Guardian games, Cosmo confirmed that it is a bug, and presumably it's also a bug that we're seeing Revelry triumphs there in the place of the new event triumphs, but they are going to fix that before the event starts. Cosmo once again says they are still working on error codes, a lot of Beaver error codes. I've been having a few on PC as well, and they're still taking feedback about missing stats now on emblems and potentially returning some of them in the future. But also quite a few players are talking about Fighting Lion, which after the update apparently has seen pretty significant changes in explosion damage and radius. And folks are speculating that that could be a bug, so Cosmo said that they are reporting that to the teams and investigating, but they're also passing feedback about adding pinnacle rewards to different raids, and also the potential of having kind of a raid rotation, so maybe a featured weekly raid that has pinnacle rewards for that week as opposed to it just being Garden of Salvation and the challenges. But personally, I think at this point it would be totally worth doing if Bungie could actually do it, even if it was old raids or something like that. It'd be nice to see everything updated at some point in the future, and at least provide a little bit of content variation, especially early on when we're hunting down pinnacle rewards in new seasons and things like that. So they're still pushing that feedback, and DMG pointed out again that they're still collecting and pushing feedback about lack of pinnacle weapons, and DMG notes that players would like to see the perk Celerity in Trials as an adept weapon perk, so they're also very much aware of the lack of adept weapons in Trials. Also, players disliking that glows require bi-weekly flawless runs for upkeep, and I kind of agree with that personally. I would rather have seen the token system again, where you collect a token for a flawless run each week, right? And then if they made those glows permanent, at least if you had a full set of permanent glows, then players would know that you've been flawless multiple times. It at least gets us a little bit closer to that pinnacle or adept stuff that I think folks really are missing with some of the Trials loot. Personally, the fact that they have an exotic ghost and sparrow in there, I think is awesome. I'm not going to flat out complain about that. But I agree with the community broadly that there is more that Bungie could do to both make the rewards inclusive for all kinds of players. It's not about making everything really elitist. I think there are clever ways to find a balance between the two and to offer a bit of variation in between. But of course, Trials has only just returned to the game, so really, I think our next focus point is going to be seeing when Bungie update that, what they do. There are totally things we're not happy with, but if Bungie make those changes quick enough, even if it was at the start of next season, but they address the majority of the feedback, and I think we could take that as a pretty significant positive, right? But once again, give us your thoughts on all of these things down below. There is a 4th Horseman flannel shirt available in the Bungie store if you pick it up, and there are always a bunch of new Bungie rewards at the start of seasons, so if you like collecting that stuff, you can check it out in the Bungie store. But for today, guys, that is everything we have to speak about in the videos. So if you have enjoyed it, a rating down below is very much appreciated. A lot of you guys keep pointing out that we're very close to 500k subs, and so I really do appreciate the support. Things have been a little bit slower than what I'd like because we're still working on this house and we're getting very close. Maybe I'll give you guys another update shortly. But nonetheless, I'm sure we're going to get past that very soon. So once again, thank you all so much for the support on the channel. Through the highs and lows of Destiny, the vast majority of you guys have been incredibly supportive despite what's going on elsewhere. So once again, I can't thank you enough for that. But also thank you for tuning in. And for today, guys, whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.